Welcome to Ace of Pentacles, your career strategy and workplace wellness podcast. I'm your host, Sarah, and I'm so happy you're here. Join me every week as we investigate how people design and discover their way through their careers. Together, we'll explore the science of well-being at work and discover tools and strategies to help us do well and be well. The problem with mental health days. In the US, policies for mental health days vary widely. Most companies I know of don't offer it as a distinct benefit outside of regular PTO. I haven't worked a regular 9-to-5 job in almost 2 years, and this was the first summer that I also did not teach. So I had some free time. I was still busy with client work, but that was mostly unstructured. Most days I had nowhere to be and nothing to actually do by a certain time, and last week was one of the hardest weeks of my life emotionally. I think when we allow ourselves the space and time to just be with ourselves, undistracted, a lot bubbles up to the surface. Sometimes this can be great. Creative solutions, ideas, clarity, and wisdom. Sometimes it's memories and life experiences that we've been avoiding for a long time, which was the case for me. Over the past 3 to 4 weeks, I've been unearthing a lot about my own self and my life that has been really hard to deal with. I've needed the time and space to allow myself to process it all. I just didn't anticipate how much time or space I would need. Something very big came to light for me about my own life very clearly last Sunday. The way I explained it to a friend is that it felt like, metaphorically, I have been opening the door to my house every single day, ignoring a giant hole in the road in front of me, getting into my car and driving around that hole to get to work, run errands, and live my life, and then I drive back around to get back home every night. For the past 39 years, this has been my reality. There's a hole in the road that I drive around so naturally that I don't even see it anymore. And then on Sunday, I opened the door and went, oh shit, there's a giant hole in the road. I let myself sit with everything that came up for me on Sunday, all day. I cried, I journaled. This was my quote-unquote mental health day for myself. And then on Sunday night, I wrote down a list of things to do for Monday. On Monday, I woke up and I felt a heaviness right around the area of my heart, and then in the pit of my stomach. I did my heart-centering meditation, and I still didn't feel okay. I dragged myself out of bed, and as I was drinking my coffee, I had a series of massive realizations about several other truths about my life that were all connected to the thing that I was dealing with on Sunday. So after some time crying, I decided I would not do the 8 things that I wrote down in my to-do list, and I decided I needed to give myself space and time to heal. But then on Monday night, I added a few things to that list and decided, okay, tomorrow's going to be the day I get all of these things done. It wasn't until Wednesday that I finally felt like I had processed a meaningful chunk of the early childhood experience I had a newfound understanding of. After a very healing conversation with my sister, I sent myself an additional 3 things to be done on Thursday, in addition to the list of 12 things I already had to do from Monday through Wednesday. On Thursday morning, I got up and I was hit with a brand new understanding of yet another thing that was connected to the thing that I had been dealing with and facing. And that opened up another emotional wound that needed to be tended to. So then there goes Thursday and Friday. On Saturday, I was finally able to feel like myself again. It wasn't until Sunday that I got started on my list of things to do for the week prior, and I only got one of those things done. Mental health is not something that we can deal with in one day. When people say they're taking a mental health day, I think what they mean is they haven't had the chance to address their emotional needs for so long that the packaging is now coming undone. And now they just need one day to put some extra tape on it before they can come back and pretend to be okay again. Because if we allow the package to completely burst open, it takes a whole lot more than a few strips of tape and a day to deal with our stuff. In the US, allowing employees to take mental health days still isn't a common practice. Most companies do not differentiate between a mental health day and other types of paid time off. Instead, we're encouraged to use vacation days, sick leave, or PTO. So you can choose. Do you want to take that vacation to unwind from work later this year, or do you want to emotionally and mentally be well? In fact, as of today, Monday, August 4th, 2025, federal law doesn't even require that companies offer PTO, which to me has always been absurd. But the other thing that I realized last week was this. The reason that I've been driving around that giant hole in the road every day is because I've been conditioned to live in survival mode. Allowing work to distract me from the emotional scars that I'm carrying means I don't actually have to deal with them. And for many people, those scars show up as passive-aggressive behaviors in the workplace. Bullying, gossip, hostility, anger towards their colleagues, and even towards leadership, management, and the company. When someone hasn't faced their own emotional pain, they often live it through their behaviors, sometimes hurting others or repeating destructive patterns without realizing it. In psychology, there are specific terms that describe this to some extent. You may have heard them. One of these terms is acting out. This is a psychodynamic term expressing unconscious emotions or trauma through behavior rather than verbalizing or processing them. It can look like aggression, withdrawal, or sabotage in relationships, and the person isn't usually aware that they're doing it. Another one is repetition compulsion. This is a Freudian concept, a defense mechanism where a person unconsciously repeats past traumatic events or relationship patterns in harmful or dysfunctional ways. Here are some other terms related to this. Projection, which is attributing one's own unacceptable feelings or traits to someone else. And here's an example. I once worked with someone who acted like she really loved the company that she worked for. I think she actually thought she did, and that she really believed in leadership. And then she would say really hurtful things about that same leadership team to everyone else at the company. And then she would tell us, the leadership team, how much her team hated the company's policies. This ended up causing a lot of stress and drama in the workplace. Displacement is another term. This is shifting emotional responses from the real source to a safer target. So an example of this would be yelling at your partner because you're angry at your boss. And that example works both ways, right? The example that I have in mind for the workplace is when a leader takes anger from their personal life or even a past workplace out on their team. And finally, emotional reenactment. This is where we repeat relational dynamics from an earlier trauma in new relationships. This also happens unconsciously, for the most part. This one I would see a lot as an HR leader. I've worked with many leaders who would start at a company and they were clearly traumatized in their old place of work, and then they would bring that trauma and transfer it to their team and other employees in this new place. Here in the Bay Area, it's very common for startups to want to hire leaders from bigger companies, which are known for their cutthroat cultures. But what they don't realize is that leaders who come from those companies often bring over not just their ability to drive results, but the culture of those companies. When I was working towards my graduate degree in psychology about 15 years ago, there was a lot of stigma around mental health. And I've been happy to see it being addressed openly for many years now. I love that companies have wellness days or annual shutdown weeks in addition to PTO and sick leave. It's even common to see people's therapy appointments blocked off on their calendars, and that's really great. But mental health is still widely misunderstood. I think many companies and HR teams don't really know how to build policies around it because it's unpredictable. It is actually really hard to build policies around something that you can't predict. And it's also so different for everyone in terms of how we address it. As someone who teaches psychology, I didn't even fully realize what a person really goes through and how and when it matters for workplace policies until I allowed myself to go through this process. If you're a company leader or HR professional listening to this, I recommend revisiting your company's policies for sick leave and mental health leave. And I know what some of you might be thinking. If your policies are generous, people will take advantage of them. Yeah, they will. Which is why I also recommend taking a look at your budget. Instead of team building events and team lunches and happy hours, if you really think something's wrong with your culture, I hope that you consider investing in therapy and coaching for your employees, especially your leaders. I once worked at a place that spent a lot of money on happy hours and encouraged everyone to attend. I won't ever forget a conversation I had with an employee once who said to me, Sarah, we're encouraged to attend these team events and happy hours, but does no one understand that I don't want to go drink with someone and do team building with this person who just yelled at me at the office the other day? The real organizational culture problem in the US is that we are not letting people heal.